I reconnected with an old high school friend on social media. Let's call him Mark. We weren't particularly close back in school, but he was always friendly enough. He sent me a friend request, and feeling nostalgic, I accepted it. We started chatting, reminiscing about old times and catching up on our lives. At first, the messages were light and friendly. He asked about my job, my family, and my hobbies. It was nice to reconnect, and I thought nothing of it. But then, the messages started to get a bit strange. Mark would comment on things that I hadn't mentioned to him. For instance, one day I got a message saying, "I saw you bought a new car. It's a nice choice." I hadn't posted anything about my new car online, nor had I told him about it. Feeling a bit creeped out, I replied, "How did you know about my car?" He brushed it off, saying he must have seen it in one of my photos. I let it go, but the feeling of unease lingered. The messages continued and became more intrusive. He would comment on my daily activities, things that I knew I hadn't shared. "Hope you enjoyed your coffee at that little cafe this morning," he wrote once. I hadn't posted or mentioned that I had gone to a cafe. The breaking point came when he sent a message saying, "You look nice in that blue sweater. Blue really suits you." I was indeed wearing a blue sweater at that exact moment, sitting in my living room with the blinds drawn. Panic set in. How could he possibly know what I was wearing? I decided to cut off contact. I blocked him on social media and changed my privacy settings. But that didn't stop him. The next day, I found a handwritten note on my car windshield. "Why are you ignoring me?" It was then that I realized this wasn't just online stalking. Mark was watching me in real life. I went to the police, but they told me there wasn't much they could do without more concrete evidence. They advised me to keep a record of everything and be vigilant. Feeling helpless, I installed security cameras around my house and started altering my daily routines to avoid patterns. For a few days, things were quiet. Then, one night, as I was reviewing the security footage, I saw him. Mark was standing across the street from my house, just staring. He stood there for what felt like hours before finally walking away. I called the police again and showed them the footage. This time they took me seriously and promised to patrol the area more frequently. They also suggested I stay with a friend or relative for a while. I decided to stay with my sister in another part of town. Even though I felt safer at my sister's place, the paranoia didn't leave me. I kept checking my phone, expecting another message from Mark. One evening, while having dinner with my sister, my phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. The message read, "You can't hide from me forever." That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak, every rustle outside made my heart race. Around 3 a.m., I heard a noise outside the window. I peeked through the curtains and saw Mark standing in the yard, looking up at me. I screamed, waking my sister, who immediately called the police. They arrived quickly this time and caught him. Mark was arrested and charged with stalking and harassment. In his possession, they found a notebook filled with detailed notes about my daily routines, my likes and dislikes, and even sketches of me. It was clear he had been watching me for a long time. The ordeal left me shaken, but I was relieved that he was finally caught. I moved to a new apartment in a different part of the city, changed my phone number, and made sure to be more cautious about my online presence. To this day, I can't shake the feeling of being watched. Every time I see an unfamiliar face or notice someone looking at me for a bit too long, my heart skips a beat. The experience taught me to be more careful about who I let into my life, and to always trust my instincts when something feels off. It was mid-October, and I desperately needed a break from my stressful job in the city. So, I rented a small, secluded cabin in the woods, about 3 hours' drive from the nearest town. The cabin was perfect, rustic, cozy, and surrounded by nothing but trees and the sounds of nature. I looked forward to a peaceful week of reading, hiking, and disconnecting from the world. The first couple of days were blissful. I spent my mornings hiking through the dense woods, my afternoons reading by the fireplace, and my evenings enjoying the serene silence. But on the third night, things began to change. I was lying in bed, reading a book, when I heard a faint tapping sound on the window. I brushed it off as a branch, or perhaps a small animal. I continued reading, but the tapping persisted. Curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to investigate. When I looked out the window, I saw nothing but darkness. The tapping had stopped. Feeling a bit unnerved, I locked the window and returned to bed, eventually falling into a restless sleep. The next day, I noticed strange marks on the window. They looked like smudges, as if someone had been pressing their fingers against the glass. I convinced myself it was just dirt or condensation, but a feeling of unease began to settle in. That evening, as I was cooking dinner, I heard footsteps on the porch. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. I cautiously approached the front door and peered through the peephole. There was no one there. I opened the door slowly, calling out, "Hello? Is anyone there?" There was no response, just the rustling of leaves in the wind. Determined not to let my imagination get the better of me, I decided to enjoy my dinner and watch a movie. But as the night wore on, the sense of being watched grew stronger. Every creak of the old cabin seemed amplified. Every shadow seemed to move. Around midnight, I heard the tapping again. This time, it was more insistent, almost frantic. I grabbed a flashlight and went to the window, my hands shaking. When I shone the light outside, I caught a glimpse of something moving quickly out of sight. It was too dark to see clearly, but it looked like a person. Panicking, I called the local sheriff's office. The dispatcher assured me that a deputy would be sent to check on me. Within 20 minutes, a patrol car pulled up to the cabin. Deputy Williams, a middle-aged man with a calm demeanor, knocked on the door. I explained everything, my voice trembling. The deputy inspected the area around the cabin but found no signs of anyone having been there. He assured me it was probably just an animal, and suggested I keep my doors and windows locked. Feeling somewhat reassured but still uneasy, I thanked him and went back inside. I locked every door and window and decided to sleep on the couch, closer to the fireplace and the warmth it provided. Around 3 a.m. I woke to the sound of soft, deliberate footsteps inside the cabin. My heart raced as I lay completely still, straining to hear. The footsteps moved closer, and I could feel the presence of someone standing over me. Summoning all my courage, I bolted upright and switched on the flashlight. There was no one there. Desperate and terrified, I grabbed my keys and ran to my car. I sped down the winding forest road, not daring to look back. I drove straight to the nearest town and checked into a hotel for the night. The next morning, I returned to the cabin with a friend I had called for help. We found the front door wide open, but nothing appeared to be missing or disturbed. I decided to cut my trip short and return home. A few weeks later, I received a call from the sheriff's office. Deputy Williams informed me that they had caught a man in the woods near the cabin. He was a drifter with a history of breaking into remote cabins. When they searched his belongings, they found a notebook filled with detailed observations about my stay at the cabin, including drawings of me sleeping and notes on my daily routine. I was grateful to be safe, but the experience left me with an unshakable feeling of being watched. I never returned to that cabin, and to this day, I can't help but check my windows and doors every night, just to make sure no one is out there, watching. Last winter, I moved into a charming old house in a quiet neighborhood. It had character, creaky wooden floors that sang songs of the past, vintage fixtures that whispered tales of a bygone era, and large windows that bathed every room in a golden glow. I was excited about starting fresh in a new place, eager to fill it with my own stories and memories. The first few weeks were blissfully uneventful. I spent my days unpacking boxes, arranging furniture, and hanging artwork. The neighborhood was lovely. Quaint shops and friendly faces made me feel welcome. At night, I would curl up with a book or watch TV, feeling content in my cozy new home. But soon, the serenity began to unravel. It started with little things, a book out of place, a kitchen drawer left open, a sense that someone had been in a room moments before me. I dismissed these oddities as forgetfulness or the house settling. After all, old houses had a way of playing tricks on their inhabitants. But as the days passed, the feeling of unease grew stronger. One evening, as I was watching TV, I noticed a shadow move across the window. My heart skipped a beat. I quickly got up and looked outside, expecting to see a branch swaying in the wind, but there was nothing. I convinced myself it was just my imagination. Yet, the shadow appeared again the next night, and the night after that. Each time, it seemed to linger longer, as if it was watching me. Determined to put my mind at ease, I decided to install security cameras around the house. I placed them strategically, one by the front door, one by the back, and a couple covering the windows that seemed to attract the shadow. Reviewing the footage became a nightly ritual. For a while, there was nothing unusual. I almost began to relax. But then, one night, I saw it, a figure standing just outside my window, barely visible in the darkness. My heart raced as I watched the figure move closer, pressing its face against the glass before disappearing into the night. I called the police, my voice trembling as I described what I had seen. They arrived quickly, searching the perimeter of my house and the surrounding area, but they found no signs of anyone having been there. No footprints, no disturbed foliage. They assured me it was probably just a prank, maybe a teenager from the neighborhood trying to scare the new resident. But I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The figure kept appearing on the footage, always at night, always watching. Determined to catch whoever it was, I decided to stay up late, waiting by the window with my phone ready to call the police. I set up a chair in the corner of the living room, where I had a clear view of the window and the security monitors. Around 2 a.m., the figure appeared again. This time, I could see it more clearly, a tall, gaunt man with hollow eyes that seemed to pierce through the darkness. I dialed 911, my hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped the phone. The police arrived within minutes, their flashing lights illuminating the night. They searched the area thoroughly, finding footprints leading away from the house, but they lost the trail in the nearby woods. They promised to increase patrols in the neighborhood, but there was little else they could do without more evidence. The next morning, I found a note slipped under my door. "I'm always watching." The sight of those words made my blood run cold. Terrified, I decided to stay with a friend for a few days. I needed to get away, to clear my head and figure out what to do next. When I returned, things seemed to have quieted down, but the fear remained, a constant presence that I couldn't shake. Every night, I would check the footage, dreading the sight of that figure. One evening, as I was locking up, I heard a whisper, "You can't hide." I spun around, my heart pounding in my chest, but saw no one. The whisper seemed to hang in the air, taunting me. I couldn't bear to stay in the house another night. I packed a bag and spent the night at a hotel, too scared to close my eyes. The next morning, I contacted a security company to install a more comprehensive system, hoping that more cameras and alarms would finally bring me some peace of mind. Weeks went by without incident. The new security system was state-of-the-art, with motion detectors, floodlights, and cameras covering every angle of the house. I started to feel safe again, convincing myself that the nightmare was over. But the unease never truly left me. I would find myself glancing over my shoulder, listening for the faintest sound. Then, one night, as I was preparing for bed, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. I hesitated before opening it. My blood turned to ice as I saw the photo, a picture of me, taken through my living room window. The timestamp showed it had been taken just minutes before. My hands trembled as I called the police again, and this time they launched a full investigation. The police increased their presence in the neighborhood, patrolling regularly and keeping a close watch on my house. They reviewed the security footage, combing through hours of video for any clue. They interviewed neighbors and set up surveillance in the woods where the footprints had disappeared. After days of relentless searching, they finally caught the man. He was a drifter with a history of stalking and breaking into homes, living in an abandoned building nearby. In his makeshift home, they found dozens of photos of me, taken over weeks of surveillance. The sight of those images, each one capturing a moment of my life through the eyes of a predator, made me feel violated and exposed. I moved out of the house the very next day. I found a secure apartment building with 24-hour security and state-of-the-art surveillance. But the experience left me paranoid and constantly looking over my shoulder. The sense of being watched never truly left me, a haunting reminder of how vulnerable we can be. Every creak of the floor, every whisper of the wind, made my heart race. I had learned to be vigilant, but the price was a peace of mind that I might never regain. Submit your stories to creepychefmedia@gmail.com. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe for future creepy content.